Hi everyone. So today, this video, we're going to dive into the hip joint and the rehab of it. So this video is going to break up into two parts. First part, the premise is mechanical enhancement. So addressing structural can only improve on function. So the second part is function is talked about in terms of rehab as exercise. Now, there's not a lot of talk about what we believe are more important than strengthening, and that includes balance and coordination type of program. And so we're going to dive into how you can improve that in regards to rehabbing the hip. So now, with hip rehab, there's one thing that is very important to understand, and if you do this really well, or your practitioner does this really well, then a lot of hips can feel better. So that idea is that a healthy hip, an optimal hip, efficient hip, whatever you want to say, is where the ball, so this is the femur, and this is the head of the femur, so it's considered a ball, and then the acetabulum, part of the pelvis, is a ball and socket joint. So that joint needs to be able to move, spin, glide, and roll around and stay centered in the socket. So here's the socket. So as you walk, all right, it needs to stay centered in the socket. So when you run, there's more freedom of motion, and the center should stay in, the head should stay in the socket, right? So obviously, my arm, range of motion doesn't allow me to give that a good, does this idea justice. But you get the idea. It needs to stay centered in the socket. However, when we have muscle imbalance, when we use our, say, hip flexors, which connect to the lesser trochanter, then it causes the hip to shift forward. When we use our glutes, it causes our femur to shift back. So we use the hip abductors that help bring our leg apart. It shifts our hip sideways, it rotates it, and then our inner thigh, so it shifts it in, kind of towards the groin, and then twist. So all that motion causes shearing if you have imbalance. So if you have weak glutes and tight or stronger hip flexors, then you get more of a shift forward, which is a common pattern. And if you have weak hip abductors and stronger or over tension in your adductors, then you have shift in. So the common pattern is too much front and in. So you get this tension pattern, high pressure system. Some people might say jamming the femoral head kind of towards the groin right here, and that's why you get this impingement a lot. So going back to the 1-2 part of the structure of this video is mechanical, treating the mechanics of the structure can only enhance exercise. So what you might know as flexibility drills, or massaging self-mobilization with a ball, or band, all that's great. However, you gotta follow that up. You have to understand when you're doing that, you gotta be aware of this idea, because if you're just mindlessly, okay, I'm just gonna go on my knees, hands and knees, and mobilize and stretch with the band or the ball, and you have your headphones on, you're listening to music, and you're just doing it, you can actually cause more shearing because you're just tugging it everywhere, and then you go do you follow up that mobilization or stretching with either yoga or strength training without understanding. You have to address the imbalance next, right? Through balanced proprioception exercise, and then retraining with a coordinated, because the body moves in patterns. Then follow that up with a coordination-based drill. Then strengthening when your hip muscles are more balanced and in a decompressed mode. Then strengthening to reinforce a different holding pattern will be greatly therapeutic. So in this video, I'm going to demonstrate one technique that I find very helpful in terms of the mechanical piece. So let me go back here. Here's my buddy. So I'm gonna take a different spin, right? And so a lot of people talk about, you know, stretching out in this motion here for good reason, but not a lot of people talk about this motion. So remember, our body works three-dimensional, so it's not just, although there's a lot of value in doing this kind of plane of motion, we also have to move sideways in rotation. So this mobilization technique, this hands-on manipulation technique, addresses this part of the plane of motion. So I'll put my leg here, and then I'll bring the leg up into a point where I feel the high pressure system. I decompress the joint, and then I provide very precise rhythmic motion to help stimulate the receptors at the hip joint, so then it can relax the muscles and help to improve joint fluid, the viscosity of it. Now that also has a dual effect of bringing input to the brain, because now I'm intentionally stimulating in a decompressed manner, and so the brain understands what it should be feeling like in an unloaded position, in a non-threatening position here. But eventually we want to translate that up to vertical or under load in context of your goal. So that's the progression of that. So from there, what I want to do is address this imbalance that's happening. Allow more strength as hip abduction, right? Making sure that when you bring your leg away, so abduct, that you also have good control of the femoral head. So if you're weak, your hip abductor, sometimes strengthening can actually cause a more high pressure system to the hip joint, because now your femoral head, you don't have control, so you're just getting an outside pressure, shearing force when you're abducting, right? So it's a double-edged sword sometimes, as you get a high pressure inside, and then you train going outside, and you have no control, and you get a high pressure system outside. So now you have in and out. That usually happens with like dancers, hypermobile clients, patients, gymnasts, ice skaters. So as I bring it out, I decompress it, reteach it to be more of a balanced hip center of the socket retraining. I want to relax the adductor, so I can do some soft tissue to the adductors, and then I want to reteach, say as you, to be strong in your adductor without the high pressure system inside or up. And so I teach you to contract that, and then I'm at the femoral head retraining so that you can understand what a healthy pattern feels like. So not just the hardware, but also the software, you could say. So improving the structure, simultaneously training the function. So then when you go to vertical weight bearing, you're owning the ability to get load and pressure to your hip joint. Now, then, so we talked about adduction, we talked about decompression now, and then we also talk about strengthening your hip abductors while being controlled and understanding where the hip joint should be. Now, we could also take it three-dimensional real quick, so I could go to, if you're a runner and you have impingement of your hip joint or groin, then I might have to do the same kind of treatment, right? So here, support the leg here in more of a flexion pattern, and do the same thing, retrain the abductor, balance it out, and also most importantly, what a lot of people don't do is the key hip extension. All right, so there's a high value in this one, and really teasing out, improving the structure mechanics of hip extension, which is basically your leg trailing behind you as you walk, hip extension, because it'll offload and decompress and detension to your spine, your sacroiliac, all the way down towards your feet. So doing the same thing, decompress in that very specific motion, and then also address inner thigh and outer thigh, balance it out. Now, so exercise, the second part of the video. Now, as you are able to have better understanding of your hip joint, now I like to follow it up, not with just straight strengthening right away, but more of balance. So I like to start out with doubles leg stance, standing on a sofa cushion, closing your eyes, and then incorporating some rotational head drills to stimulate your inner ear, your vestibular system, and your proprioceptive system. So then now the hip is centered in the socket right here, making it not as complex, reteaching your body to have understanding of how to keep and rotate and pivot without that shearing force. Then you go into more challenge, which means you're on one leg or on one leg on a stool, so you're half loading this hip, and closing your eyes and doing the same thing. Turn your head while the hip is, while you're retraining the hip to stay in the middle of the socket. Then if you've done with that and you pass that test, then we might add more of like a lunge pattern, all right, to that, other complex strengthening exercise. Then we might incorporate more weight-bearing squats, farmers walks, all the strengthening, high-value strengthening base exercise. So that's what needs to happen, and the value of addressing, let me go around here, the mechanics before the structure. And so then to summarize, in terms of exercise, incorporate more balance exercise. So that could be yoga if you are able to understand how to do yoga-based exercise while keeping the head centered in the socket, to more coordination-based exercise, then strengthening-based exercise. All right. Next video, we're going to talk about the impact of treating the pelvis before the hip, which not a lot of people talk about. Okay, bye.